I didn't know if I should stand. No, thanks, guys. It's great to have Landry here with us. He's a grown-up now, and, thanks, Mom, right? Happy Mother's Day, ladies. Those of you that are mothers. And then all of you who had mothers, happy Mother's Day. We should be especially celebratory today, just in honor of our moms. I've been, as far as I know, I'm at 65 years old. I think I've at least been aware of 60 Mother's Day messages. So when Pastor Barry called yesterday afternoon, and, of course, he was on drugs, like Amy said, and I was out working in my backyard, just blue sky. Well, it was a little cloudy, but in my mind, blue sky, man. I was like doing a bunch of landscaping. I was really kind of excited about, because I saw the finish line. And then Pastor Barry called and said a whole bunch of different things about a message maybe in 15 minutes and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, it's hilarious. I loved what you were sharing. It's like, I heard a little bit of that. But anyway, Pastor Barry's been doing, as most of you know who have been here for any time in the past few months, he's been doing a series called Resisting the Babylon Blueprint. So I thought, even though it's Mother's Day, I would continue in the spirit of that. So I'll be resisting the babble on message today. I will not babble on longer than need be. So as soon as you quit listening, I'll wrap up and say, oh, the Lord's done speaking, and we'll move forward. Anyway, being in children's ministry most of my adult life, I have no Mother's Day message in my back pocket, I have a lot of different messages that have to do with kids, leaders, etc. But a mom message never showed up. So this one's fresh, It's going to be like eating one fresh little baby carrot today. So anyway, let's pray. And I'm just really in preparing this, I just said, Lord, if there might be many moms that you want to just kind of say something to or let them know something, or maybe just one. Hopefully it's not zero, or I've missed you completely, Lord. But at any rate, let me just pray over this and ask the Lord that what will come out will be something that is important to Him and that will minister to you. So, Father, we come to you in Jesus' name, and just thank you for being here with us and for caring for us, for guiding us. Lord, I just ask that today you'll speak to all of our hearts, including mine, Lord. Anything that you want to accomplish in us, anything that you want to, a reassurance you want to give us, or even a challenge, Lord, we open our hearts to hear your voice in your wonderful name. Amen. I'm using two. This one. So if I were to title this message, well, I did title it, but it isn't one I'd probably keep. But just for you guys, I would probably entitle it, "Why Does This Have to Be So Hard?" And in saying that, not to bring a depressing message of hardship, but in thinking about what moms go through and what they do, it's like, why does it have to be so hard? And maybe the subtitle might be, where did I go wrong? For some, and in all of our lives, we could look back. I think those of us who are parents, I can look back and go, man, where did I miss it, or did I miss it? So in just thinking about some of the challenges that I know my mom went through with me, for some pretty serious ones. And I'm not going to make that the theme of this message, but just knowing I say some because I certainly can't know it all. I'm not a mom. I haven't been through what some of you have been, and many others. However, I just want to look at some things, and because I feel like the Lord just kind of showed me something that might be a blessing to you. So with that question in mind, why is being a mom hard at times? Why is it so challenging? Why is something that is so beautiful, so rewarding, and so God-ordained can be so difficult sometimes? Okay? So maybe not the typical Mom's Day message, which is probably why I don't normally get to stand here. Anyway, we're going to just take a look at where motherhood started. Of course, we know it started in the heart of God, but where it started on this planet, God in the book of Genesis, of course, we know He made his man, in His image, Adam, and I would say, looking at the story of Adam and Eve that we see, motherhood got off to a rough start. I'll just put it like that, a very rough start. And I remember seeing a sign and thinking about just being a mom or what I experienced with my mom, and then working with children, I saw my wife and I have seen a lot of parent-child exchanges, interaction, relationships. And so I remember I was in a guy's office one time and I saw a sign on the wall, and he's very successful businessman, and there was a little sign behind his chair there in his grand office, and it said, "I never said it would be easy. I only said it would be worth it." And I thought of that sign as I was working on this message and thought, man, that's motherhood, not easy, but worth it. And I know I could speak to fathers today too, but you guys don't matter today. So let's look at Genesis really quick. In the second chapter, God had a conversation with Adam. It looks like shortly after creation, and He was explaining a few things to Adam, and He said, He told him about the tree. And as it's funny, I'm an Old Testament. I love to read the Old Testament. I don't study it with the analytical and the background training that someone like Pastor Barry has, where he knows so much history and so many different, he has these different cultural viewpoints and knowledge from his studies. I don't have that. I just read it because I love the stories, okay? So, but I've read it a lot. And when I've always had this picture of God, because you and I have probably both heard that God told Adam and Eve, do not eat of the tree that's in the middle of the garden. You can eat from all the other trees, And it wasn't until looking at this last night, although I've looked at this story thousands of times, I realized that's not what happened at all. Because before God formed Eve from Adam's rib, He said to Adam, of all the trees of the garden you can eat, but don't eat from the one in the middle, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Shortly after God said that to Adam, put Adam in a deep sleep. We know the story. He made Eve. Adam gave a speech when he saw Eve, and said, I see a cause. For this cause, the guy's going to leave his father and mother. So Adam and Eve became one. They lived in the garden. Well, there's a lot of things that aren't said that we have to kind of fill in the blanks. And I want to take a moment with this, although, okay, what does this have to do with motherhood? We're getting there. But when Eve was approached by the serpent, he said, hey, did God say? Well, Eve had not heard. It's not recorded anyway. Eve had not heard God say, don't eat of the tree. She heard what her husband told her God said. Now, I don't know if you've ever played the little game where you tell somebody something, then they have to whisper it to the next person, and you see how much it changes when it gets down the line. Somewhere between that and what I will just call guy communication, because if some of you ladies, you probably have experienced what I'll just call guy communication, which if you ask, how did your day go, or hey, what happened? Like, I'll get off a lengthy phone call, and I have Bluetooth into these hearing devices, and I'll get done with this phone call. Of course, Linda's sitting there hearing one side of the conversation. She says, what? So, come on, fill me in. And I said, well, man, they're doing great, And I talked for 15 minutes. Well, I think that it is just possible that Adam might have said something like, yeah, that tree over there, you might want to watch it where that's concerned. No good. We don't know. I was looking at Eve's conversation with the serpent, and she didn't say exactly what God said to Adam. It was slightly different. Because she said, we're not supposed to eat of it or touch it. And I always, what's funny, I didn't pay attention to details for years because I thought, why did Eve change what God said? She only knew what Adam said. We don't know what Adam told Eve. But it looks like she was not well equipped to deal with that serpent. Here's the point. When she was deceived by the serpent, she ate of the fruit and gave it to Adam. A terrible curse came into the earth, as we know. But God said something to Eve. He said, because of this, I mean, he had something to say to the serpent, he had something to say to Adam, and he had something to say to Eve. All of them. It cost all of them, you know. But when he said to Eve, hey, I'm going to greatly multiply your sorrow. And of course, he talked about children, he talked about childbirth. But I think in that statement, God was letting Eve know, we're not just talking about labor pains. You know, he said, I'm going to greatly multiply your sorrow. And you're going to have difficulty in childbirth. What he didn't say, but I think was part of that, is you're going to just have difficulty. It's going to be hard. Some things are going to be very difficult now that would have been easy if you hadn't listened to the serpent. And of course, Adam, you know, he got in trouble. Every time you get a thorn in your hand, thank Adam, guys. So anyway. In Genesis, and you know what, let's just look at that real quick. I love this. Moving past what happened with the serpent. In chapter 4, Eve she conceives a child, first child born on this earth, and she said something when Eve conceived and bore Cain. She said, I've gotten a man from the Lord. And I love that Eve acknowledged where Cain came from. You know, she knew that God was the giver of this child. She said, I've gotten a man from the Lord. Then she bore his brother Abel. And thinking back to what God said to Eve, the very first mom that ever walked, you know, on the earth, look at what happened with her boys. This is even before this place was really populated. To our knowledge, there were 4 people, mom, dad, and 2 boys. But it didn't take long for the wheels to come off where the family relationship was concerned. Because basically in one generation, brother turned against brother and the first murder happened. But I want to look at this for a moment. And from this light, the reason I wanted to get here was this. A lot of times, I think with parents, and I know this applies to moms and dads, but specifically moms today, as you raise your children, I've heard many times that parents will talk about how one child is this way and the other one, it's like they're polar opposites. Where did this one come from? You know, this baby's a stranger compared to, or this child has these strengths and this one, it's got all these weaknesses. This one is so easy to get along with. This one, the least little thing, they're angry. There's so many different personality differences we see, and they're not all super positive, super negative, but we see the differences that are just inherent in kids, in young people, in young adults. And so many times the question comes to a parent, and I think moms, this can really beat them up when there's an issue with their kids that they don't know where it came from, they don't know what to do about it, is where did I go wrong? And why is this so hard? Consider this, Eve, the mother of all living, she had to experience what happened with her 2 first boys when we know the story, right? Cain brought an offering to God, a sacrifice of sorts. He brought of the first fruits of the ground, or he brought of the fruit of the ground, not first, he brought of the fruit of the ground, and said the Lord didn't respect, he didn't just not respect the sacrifice, it said the Lord did not respect Cain and his sacrifice. And then Abel brought of his flock, And it said God respected Abel and his offering. Well, Cain was mad, killed his brother. What do you think mom went through? What do you think the very first mom went through? Do you think her sorrow was multiplied? Yes. And you know who was behind it? The enemy of our soul, really. He was behind all of it. Everything from the temptation to eat of that fruit to the residual effect of the curse. Well, then, do you think, I would think that that voice in Eve's head would say, see what happened with your boys? It's all your fault. It's all your fault. If you hadn't, this would have happened. This wouldn't have happened. Or if you had only, this could have been prevented. You know, I want to just let you know, Cain and Abel grew up in the same household. God said to Cain when he was mad, he was ticked off. It said he was very angry because he wasn't accepted and God didn't respect his sacrifice. And God asked Cain, he said, why do you have that look on your face? Why do you have that look on your face? Why are you mad? He said, all you have to do is do what's right and you'll be accepted. Well, apparently Cain didn't perk up because the next thing we know, he talked with Abel out in the field and he killed him. I've heard people say before that, and there might be some validity to it, there probably is, that Abel was accepted because of his sacrifice. Well, he brought the first fruit and that meant something to God. He brought a lamb. Yes, I know, all that's probably true. But if you look in Hebrews, there's a statement made about Abel that kind of opens this up. And I want to share this with you because I think it has something to do with his mom. The Bible says in Hebrews 11, I believe it's the 4th verse. In fact, I'm sure it is. I wrote it down. Anyway, in Hebrews 11, it says this, by faith, Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts. Now that may not hit you like a ton of bricks, but consider this. What does Hebrews 11:1 say? Hebrews 11:1 says, now, I'm just going King James, that's how I was raised, although I love the Message and all the other more current, translations. But it says this, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, and it's the evidence of things not seen. If Abel received witness that he was righteous by God and God testified of his gifts and his righteousness, that has to mean that's what Abel was hoping for. If he offered that sacrifice to God by faith, he offered it hoping for something. And you know what he was hoping for? He was hoping for what he got. Because by faith, he offered that sacrifice to God. And I thought to myself, man, what a picture. How could Abel receive the impossible? Because you know what Hebrews 11:4 says right there? What it says was totally impossible by law, by the curse of the law. How could Abel, born of two people living under the curse of the law, have God stand up and say, this guy is righteous, when righteousness was impossible before the sacrifice of Jesus? I mean, in a legal sense, it was impossible. But Abel, this is what I think, and I can't prove it's true, but you can't prove it's not. So let's just go there for a minute. Abel had this idea of making God an offer that he hoped he wouldn't refuse. He believed he wouldn't refuse. And I think the only way that Abel, because Abel, what was Abel hoping for? For righteousness. Here's what I think he was really hoping for. I think he was hoping for what he had heard his mom talk about before the collapse, before the middle of the garden incident, call it what you will. I think the only way Abel could have hoped for righteousness is that he heard his mom and perhaps his dad talk about the good old days, if you will. The way it used to be before this mess, before everything was hard, before there was disappointment, before there was sorrow, we were free as birds. We had it made. The garden supplied everything we need. God showed up in the cool of the day. We talked with him every day. We were free. We looked better. We didn't have to cover ourselves and hide. We didn't feel ashamed of how we looked or how we felt. Everything was good. I think the only way Abel could have offered this sacrifice to God by faith, hoping that he would receive righteousness, is because he wanted to feel what he heard his mom talk about before she made that terrible mistake, listened to the wrong voice. And again, I think she probably went into that conversation not equipped by her husband. I didn't know this was going to come out so somber today. Sorry. It was actually fun when I was studying it. Well, I'm just trying to represent Pastor Barry. You know, he does those like apologies. So I wanted to throw one in there. I wrote this down because when Abel did that, and I think that is a tribute to his mom and possibly his father too. But Eve was deceived. She was deceived. Adam wasn't deceived. That might sound bad. Oh yeah, she got fooled. She wasn't equipped like Adam was. Adam heard God say to him face to face, "Don't eat of that tree. The day you'll eat it, you die." Eve only got to hear hearsay. It stinks. With that in mind, I think when Eve realized she'd fallen into that trap, got lied to, smooth talked, and then now she was going to have to deal with sorrow, and then moving forward when she saw what happened with her sons, her boys. The older one killed the younger. Listen, a mom hurts whether her son, like Cain, is wayward or like Abel is the one wounded. Same pain for a mom, for any good parent. So Eve had to deal with that. Here's what I don't get. I mean, I do in a sense, but something that's hard to understand and to make sense in your mind is, with all the difficulty, potential and probable, the difficulty that will come along in parenthood, and especially for moms, what is the deal with wanting to have kids? You know, it can only be God's fault. Just kidding. It is a God-given desire, but I think sometimes I looked into in 1 Samuel. There's such a great story, and I want to wrap up with this. I have no idea what time it is. Is there a clock or something? 11 what? Oh, I thought you said 52. Like, well, okay. Still, we'll be out early. Maybe. In 1 Samuel, there's a perfect picture of a mom's desire for kids, a challenged desire as well. But I want to look at that really quick. Hannah, who most of us in here, maybe all of us know, who became the mother of one of the greatest prophets of Israel, Samuel. She was unable to have kids. And she went to the temple one day with this desire to have kids. She wants to be a mom. And of course, in thinking about, what I mentioned a moment ago, I don't understand. I mean, in a sense, I understand it, but it does make sense sometimes. The desire to be a mom that most ladies have, even many times young girls, they go, man, someday, I'll have my little family, it'll be like this, and I know my own daughter and then my granddaughters, which I have 6 of them, so I've seen a bit from them. Man, they're practicing being a mom with dolls. Some of them practice being a mom with their pets, and they get good at it, but it's what's crazy is they're not seeing the difficulty, but like that sign said on my friend's wall, might not be easy, but it will be worth it. You know, there are payoffs. But when I think about just mom becoming a mother, I think of like, I guess just this would be the short list of challenges for me would be like, okay, morning sickness, you know, number one, nope. Months of discomfort, backache, and potentially hard to get back in shape, you know, no thanks. How about labor, pain, and delivery? That's basically like just saying, I want a bunch of kidney stones, you know, or whatever. I've heard that they're similar in their misery. And then following that, years of inconvenience, and sometimes decades of inconvenience and personal sacrifice, and the very thing that you really would like to do, you don't get to do because you got to help somebody else get to do what they want to do. So anyway, that, and then probably potential heartache, like the worst part, you know, potential heartache, heartbreak. Things don't go well, or there are parents that have lost a child, and it's just all that. But it's like, but I still want to have, you know? It can only be God-given. But I want to look really quick at Hannah's prayer. Hannah could not have children. She came to the temple, and let's look at the prayer real quick. It says, she came to the temple. She was in bitterness of soul, and she prayed unto the Lord, crying very, very hard. It said, and she vowed a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your handmaid and remember me and not forget me, but will give to me a man-child, I'll give him to you all the days of his life, and there shall no razor come upon his head. Now, Hannah, I think about her prayer and her promise in her cry to the Lord, like, Lord, I want to be a mom. I want to have a boy. That's the cry of my heart. And, of course, if you know the backstory, Hannah was one of two wives to her husband, and the other one tormented her because she was childless. And that's why she said, look on me in my affliction. She was being afflicted and really picked on, belittled, kind of bullied by this other wife that could have kids. So anyway, Hannah prays this prayer and says, Lord, remember me, don't forget me. Look at my affliction, see the grief that I'm dealing with, and give me a man-child. If you do, I'll do this. And then again, you know, I mentioned like the whole man type of communication that I think probably happened that was a little weak in Genesis. It's just funny, guys, we sometimes, you know, and I'm glad I'm a guy, don't get me wrong, but sometimes we're bonehead. But Eli, who was the priest, Eli's watching this because it says, and it came to pass while she continued praying before the Lord. Think about that. That's what's happening. This girl who's just heavy heart and desperate, praying before the Lord. And here's good old Eli's perspective. It said, Eli watched her mouth, and Hannah, she spoke in her heart. Only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Therefore, Eli assumed she was drunk. So Eli says to her, this brokenhearted girl, how long are you going to be a drunk? Put your bottle up and maybe something will happen. I mean, it's hilarious and it's also pathetic. But and then of course Hannah explained, you know, that's not what's happening here. I'm just desperate for the Lord. And then Eli, in a brilliant turnaround move, said, the Lord grant you your request, you know. And although Eli didn't have the power to grant her request, God had already made a decision. And I think he poked Eli and just probably jolted him into saying, the Lord grant your request, you know, because Eli was a bit clueless at that time. Anyway, her prayer, remember me, don't forget me, give me a man-child, is something that God heard. And my point is, God hears a mom's prayer. He listens for the prayer of a mom to be, or a mom that already is. There is something about a mom lifting something up before the Lord about her kids that I believe the Lord really listens to. It's important to him because he put those deep feelings, those deep desires into your heart, into your soul. It's part of who God has made ladies to be, I believe. And God also understands the difficulty and sorrow that sometimes you deal with as a mom that nobody else deals with in that exact way. He understands. That's part of why he sent his son, because he hated that curse he hated the difficulty that came toward you ladies as a result of the curse. Just like he hates that my backyard grows thorns, I mean, men, we have our own challenges, and I'm not just talking about landscaping, but the fact is things are hard for guys. Things are hard in a different flavor for you ladies. And the Lord understands. When you hold your children up to him, he understands. Man, I'm so used to a wireless, sorry. I keep moving these away. When I was, I wanted to say this too, and this is relating to what happened with Eli. God hears what man misunderstands. He hears what man misunderstands. If nobody else understands what you're crying out to the Lord, he does. He hears you. Let me just share this quick testimony, and we'll be done. When I was a teenager, and I think when I spoke last fall, and I shared a bit of my personal story with you, so if parts of that are repetitive, I apologize, but this will be short and sweet. When I was 16, I moved out of my home. I was raised in Northern California. I don't want to just say I was rebellious, although there was definitely rebellion there, but it was a terrible relationship with my stepfather. So with all the difficulty in that, I'd already run away one time, and that was, awesome. And yeah, it was a disaster. Anyway, but I moved out of state to live with my birth father, who I'd recently met. Well, one of the things that I had decided when I left home was I'm never going to church again, ever. Because I'd gone to, I'd been, I don't want to say dragged, but I'd been made to go to church since I was a young kid. And it was Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and then sometimes there'd be a special meeting, which was just challenging. I just didn't like to go. And it wasn't that I hated the church. I just didn't want to be still for, the 2 hours. And so I had nothing against the Lord, because I really did believe in God in my heart, and I had a fear of the Lord, but I never wanted to go to church again. So I kind of made this inner vow, to myself when I moved out to live with my heathen birth father. I was like, man, I'm never going to church again. Woo! I was excited because it felt like freedom. Well, I knew my mom was praying for me. I knew she was, and I felt sorry for her. And I don't say that to be snide. I'm telling you, that's what I remember thinking, man, Mom, bless your heart, Bless your heart. You're praying, but, man, what's the point? I already know what I'm doing. I'm not going to church. I'm being free from all that. I'm not going to sit there and listen to another message or whatever. Or I didn't really even listen to them. I memorized hymnals like you wouldn't believe. I just would find something to read and kind of check out and try to be still. Well, Mom was praying for me, and I'd already made an inner vow I'm never going to church again. And then I was almost 17 years old. I started my senior year in high school shortly after before I turned 17. And when I was a new kid, I moved to Idaho, which I'd never been, but I loved it. Northwest, it's pretty cool. I'll say it like this. Let me see. Oh yeah. I was done with church. My mom wrote me a letter. That's what I didn't want to forget. She wrote me a letter after I'd been there a few weeks. And she said, Dana, I've contacted the Chamber of Commerce, and they suggested some churches. And that's when I really felt sorry for her, because she had listed 3 churches And, I was like going nuts, as my dad gave, my birth father gave me almost 0 rules. He gave me 2 rules, literally, and I remember them. I can quote them word for word. He said, I got 2 rules. And I'm like, man, I came from the land rules. Sweet. We had thousands of rules, how I was raised. And he said, don't bring drugs in the house. Rule number 1. He didn't say don't use them. He said, don't bring them in the house. Like, yeah, I remember that. And then the second one was, if you're going to stay out all night, so I can, He said, if you're going to stay out all night, I want a phone call. That was the 2 rules. Thanks, Pop. I got this. Things are going to go well for me, So my mom sends me, here's this list of 3 churches that they suggested, and I remember I felt so sorry for her. And I didn't know what happened to that letter. I filed it, somewhere important. Well, I went to school, and I'd been a new kid in high school, didn't know, of course, anyone. But the Lord showed me something about 3 weeks into high school that I did not expect him to show me. He showed me something blonde. I saw this girl in the hall, and I'm like, surely she's got to have a boyfriend. I remember that was my first thought, so I was kind of like, and then a couple of weeks later I saw her again. It's like, well, maybe not. Anyway, we ended up talking, and we've been married 46 years now, but so that was a quick jump ahead, I know. But what happened was this, and I'm saying this to talk about a praying mom, because my mom was not praying for me to meet a blonde, I can tell you that. When I met Linda, it was her 16th birthday that day, which I didn't know. I didn't know that. Met her on her 16th birthday. We spoke in the hall briefly. I collected a phone number, of course. So smooth. It was amazing. She fell so hard. Anyway, so her dad had told her, as she was like, when she was 14, 15 years old, he said, hey, when you're 16, you can date, but not till you're 16. So when I, talked with her in the hall, I asked her out. She said, yeah, I can go out and blah, blah. Little did I know that was the coronation day of dating, So she's all a Twitter, and excited. Not like Twitter that we have. There was no internet then. But she was pretty excited. And I was like, hey, this is great, So she told her dad, hey, Daddy, I met this boy, and he asked me out. And you said I could, I could date when I was 16, and I'm 16, And her dad says, that's awesome, honey. You can date. He goes, you can date. Yeah, you can go out with him. But he said, church is the date. And the Lord said to Dana, why is thy countenance fallen? And why is it? She told me that. She said, well, my dad said we can go out, kind of. But he said going out means you have to come to church with us. And I'll never forget. Because I told you, I believed in God. I did. I had a fear of the Lord. I just did not want to go to church. But when she told me that, I was like, you did this. Man, I remember I was so mad. But she was blonde. And it wasn't just because she was blonde, but she was like that girl. I'm like, oh, man. I'm like, okay, I'll go to church with you. I'll go. So I remember first trip to church, it was Sunday school. And we went into, and this is I'm done now, almost. We went into Sunday school. And it was like when I walked in, I was like, man, this place, it's nice. I mean, and the Sunday school teacher was a guy that, I don't know, kind of probably reminds me of Brian a little bit. Tall guy, energetic, and he walked up to me and introduced himself. Super handsome. Yeah, all that stuff. Muscles. Anyway, he walked up to me and he said, hey, my name's Lloyd. How are you? And I said, fine. I'm introduced myself. And when I said my name, I said, I'm Dana Johnson. He said, you won you took gold medal at wrestling tournament yesterday. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, nobody knows that. Nobody even looks at that. It's on the back sports page. in one font, But it kind of blew me away. Well, I mean, all that stuff contributed to the Lord. I remember that to me was huge. He remembered seeing my name. I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. Nobody knows who did anything in wrestling, especially back then. Are you kidding? So, but all that the Lord is using as a hook. It turns out they had the most amazing youth group. It also turns out that Lloyd, his name is Lloyd DeWitt, Vietnam vet, I didn't know then, he lost one leg and then lost like 40% of muscle tissue on the other leg. He walked like anyone normal. I mean, you could not tell. Turns out he was just a freak of nature and an awesome man. He climbed mountains, like mountain climbing. I mean, it was weird. Lloyd was, but he was an instrument of God in being, not just being welcoming and being a great man, but remembering. All those things were a hook. You know why all that stuff happened? Because my mom said, Lord, I got a wayward son. Bring him back. Don't let him be lost. Don't let him be wasted. Don't let his life be wasted. And anyway, for you moms today, I just want you to know God hears your prayer. Jesus came to not just alleviate, but to eliminate the kind of deep sorrow that wounds you and will want to follow you and torment you. The question, is this my fault? What did I do that was wrong? What did I not do that was right? That's a question that is not the right question. I think because there's no good answer to those questions. The question really is, Lord, what did you do that was right? Because I'm with you. Jesus came to heal broken hearts. He came to repair breaches. He came to bring freedom to those that stumble around bruised and beat up by life. And like Eve, who had one son that was so reaching for God and believing that in God's goodness so much that he could even make him righteous in an impossible way. And then the other son, angry, sullen, resentful, and murderous. Hey, part of the curse. Part of the curse that came into this earth. But you know what, for moms, you've done well. I mean, I believe this is what the Lord wants to say to you. You've done your best. That's all the Lord asks. Even when you didn't do your best, it doesn't matter. Jesus did his best. If we'll lean into him and say, Lord, fill in the blanks for my failings, for my weakness, or for when I just don't know what to do. Because let's face it, being a mom doesn't come with a manual. You got to figure it out. And the Lord wants you to know he's pleased with you. Let me pray over you. Father, I just lift up all the moms that are here, those that will be moms someday. Lord, each one of them I just lift up to you, and I pray that if there's any sorrow or any difficult memories or just challenging times, even if it's just weariness, maybe not sorrowful, but just difficulty and weariness, and Lord, sometimes just hardship and having to tough it out. Lord, I ask that you will fill in the gaps and let the moms know that many of the things that they shoulder that are burdens are things that you want to take from them, and you want to let them know that they're doing well. They're doing well, and they're walking in a way that pleases you. I thank you for the moms that are just such a blessing in our lives. In your wonderful name, amen. Well, I'm trying to think, what does Pastor Barry do right now?